Yeah, it makes a difference, doesn't it, Nicholas? I'm sorry. Anyways, we'll call this meeting to order for January the 16th. And before we start, I would ask that council and our guests, if they so wish, will take a moment of reflection. Okay, thank you. All right, so we do have the agenda. It was emailed out before the weekend there. I don't believe there's any additions to the agenda this evening. It is, I think it's going to be a fairly lengthy night, not by the agenda, but by the closed session with the planning staff here. So first item then would be a motion to confirm the agenda as it was circulated. Councillor Rose and Councillor O'Donnell, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Does anybody have a conflict of interest with anything on the agenda? Okay. The consent agenda is there. There are a number of items there. Actually, I believe 19 by the looks of it. Anybody want anything pulled and dealt with separately, or maybe just clarified as to what it is? Andrew?
Regarding the consent agenda?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, the CN issue regarding funding drains. Do we have any drains in the area that are going to be affected by that? And are we concerned about this?
Okay, and I'll maybe let Dan or Jeff answer, but we don't have CN per se. Actually, I think they own the line, but God rejects it or uses it. And we have all kinds of drains that go across or under rail lines. So
yeah, I think the lane, our line is the CP line, but we haven't got this problem locally, but we've supported this resolution in the past when Perth South made a motion about a year and a half ago, and municipality West Perth supported that one. And it's not an issue we're dealing with locally, but we see it as an issue provincially.
And what number is that one, Andrew?
I'm sorry, I have my notes open rather than my agenda.
4.9. Okay, so we have supported that through a previous resolution with Perth South. So I don't know that the necessity is there that we need to support it again, but we're certainly in favor of that. Any other items, Andrew, again?
Also, there was the letter from the Ontario Sheep Farms, and we actually have quite a few of those around here, and they were talking specifically about having different bylaws applying to livestock guard animals than apply to dogs in general. And I was wondering, what about that as well? Do we have different bylaws for livestock guard animals? I didn't get the chance to research that.
Dan, I'll let you answer that one then.
Yeah, we wouldn't have any of the exemptions that they're looking for. So they'd be fairly accurate in what their concerns have been brought forward from a licensing perspective, as well as the kenneling perspective when you hit X number of dogs. It's certainly a bylaw that is due to be reviewed. And that's something in due course of time we would get to. Otherwise, if council wants us to move it up the pipe, so to speak, we could certainly do that. It is in need of work, kind of our domestic animals, I guess, governing documents as a whole, because we actually lean on our land use bylaw quite a bit for that purpose. So
could we, I'm not sure what the correct term is, but could we resolve to take a look at that bylaw sometime in the near future?
We can have staff have a look at it and come back with a report. It may not happen at the next meeting, but at some point down the road, they could certainly come back and give us a report on that. Another one, Andrew?
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
We got a letter from the Social Research and Planning Council that sort of caught my attention, because it's talking about living wage and food insecurity, all this sort of stuff that I've made it clear that I'm particularly interested in. There is something that I would like to bring to council for the next meeting regarding a pilot project over at the factory that I work at, which directly addresses that sort of thing. And I was wondering if anyone could advise me on how to turn that into a notice of motion. I'm not entirely certain how that's done.
I think later on at the notice of motion section on the agenda, if you want to bring forward a motion or advise council of a motion, you certainly can do so.
Thank you very much. I'm almost done. There was one other else here. We also had an agenda item regarding the Hicks House renovation. And I was looking at the heritage buildings that we have listed in the area. And so far as I can recall, they seem to all be in Mitchell. And curiously, they don't seem to include any of the old churches in the countryside or any of the old schoolhouses, for example, that have been turned into homes. Given that those are kind of an integral landscape piece of the tourism aspect of having all of this beautiful countryside, I was wondering if we could look at increasing the number of heritage designated buildings in the area.
Well, the way we've operated, we don't designate them unless we're asked. So the ones that are designated, I believe there's 4 in the information that we had tonight there. And they have all asked that, and it doesn't have to be the whole building. It can be a part of the building. It can be the front, you know, as the Hicks House is the front facade on that has been designated as historical or heritage. As far as any churches, and Dan or Jeff can jump in here, but our process up until now is if we're asked to designate, then we'll consider it. But we just don't go around nilly-willy saying, okay, we want to designate this building, you know?
Given that part of our directive is to aim towards keeping the tourism section of our county active, is there any sort of incentive that we can offer people to increase the chances of us preserving these historic buildings that aren't otherwise designated?
So I'll just start by saying this one's really not coming out of the consent agenda, but I think we might as well speak to it because it's here. There wasn't a specific consent agenda item you were asking about. Yeah.
It's later on.
Yeah, but I don't want to leave the question unanswered. So we have a Heritage and Culture Committee, which I'm not aware of the history of how the 4 or 5 properties that are currently designated were selected. There's certainly a balance about the benefits of designating versus the pushback of sort of over regulating properties that aren't a concern. And that sort of unneeded regulation, I think you get a lot of negative publicity for that, which can do more damage than good, sort of the unintended consequences. So if we were ever going to look at expanding that heritage program, I think the kind of ultimate move is designation, but I think there's many interim steps in terms of recognizing, celebrating, telling people about them, telling stories about them, having a walking tour of significant architectural properties. Those kinds of things are all on the sort of path that you could take. It doesn't have to jump right to designation, because I think jumping right to designation would be very negatively viewed. But if council wanted to direct the Heritage Committee to take a look at something like that, you have a subcommittee that is designed to look at those topics, and you could certainly ask that committee to do research on it and give them budget to do research on it in the fullness of time.
I would just add to the CAO's comment of bringing up Bill 23 and its implications, which I know I do have a report from county staff ready to come to council more on Bill 23, but ultimately it's looking at making heritage designations harder to make, and essentially from an affordable housing standpoint, it doesn't want heritage designations to be made. Just a comment, and I know you were speaking to churches and things like that.
Thank you.
Any other items at this time? Okay, so there's nothing there that we need to pull out, I don't think, and deal with separately. So I think we can still deal with the consent package as one item. So recommendation is that the Council Municipality of West Perth accept the consent items 4.1 to 417 for information, and then also the minutes of the December 19th regular meeting and the January 4th special council meeting be adopted. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Phelps. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Okay, so moving on, we don't have a public delegation here tonight. I don't think we have anything from planning until later on in closed session. First item in reports that we have is Chief Building Official. So Bob, if you want to come up and highlight your report.
Power on. Thank you. This is monthly report for October summary. Permits listed, value of construction, zoning certificates, property locations. Things have started slowing down a bit as far as permits going. Residential starts are still fairly steady. Any questions on October?
Any questions for Bob? No? Carry on.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So we're sliding up into December and the year end quarterly summary. Just scroll up a little further, Anna. I'm sorry, down. Value construction permit numbers are fairly consistent with previous years. Value of construction is quite a bit higher than we've seen in other years, but I think that's mostly due to increased construction costs and not necessarily volume. We're still getting a reasonable number of residential permit applications. I think that's going to be fairly consistent for the coming year. We're lucky in West Perth here. We have a fairly large agricultural base that offsets permits from residential and commercial with ag permits. So over the years, our numbers have been fairly stable, and we haven't seen very large swings in permit numbers because of any economic downturn. Any other questions?
Any questions for Bob on that report? Okay, I don't see any. So we do have a recommendation here that Municipality of West Perth accept the fourth quarter permit summary report for information or as information. We're moving seconder for that. Councillor Duck and Councillor Harold. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Okay, and then the next one, as we were talking previously about the Hicks House. So I'll let you do that one too, Bob.
All right. Actually, I'd like Matt to come up. He was the author of the report for this, for the Heritage Committee. He did the background on the report. Matt, do you want to?
Mayor, Council. Yeah, so we've been approached by the owner of the Hicks House, Mr. Dan Cronin, and he's hired a consultant that specializes in historical buildings such as this. And the proper process and all that to fix and maintain the building. Both Bob and I have looked at the report that they prepared, and we really don't see anything that's out of line with it. We've met with Mr. Cronin with the Heritage Committee And he is fully on board for what the consultant has proposed. And we suggest that that council take this as information. If you have any questions.
Any questions for Matt on that? I gather the only reason that we're getting involved in this is because it was designated as a
Yeah,
heritage
just
building.
the front facade.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so he wants to replace the windows, but the windows themselves are not original. They're a facsimile of the original windows. There actually is some, there's some vinyl windows that are on the front that were replaced at some point, probably without the Heritage Committee's knowledge. There's some other woodwork that needs to be replaced, but his big thing right now is trying to get the windows replaced, trying to get that energy efficiency factor back to that building, to his tenants.
okay. Again, any questions? Nicholas?
So I was wondering, could Murray maybe summarize the committee's discussion? You're not on the Heritage Committee anymore. Right, Doug, could you, yeah, sure, summarize the discussion of the committee's thoughts, I guess.
I think everybody maybe had a chance to glance at the report. I think they've done their due diligence, like it was discussed there, that the professionalism they brought in to do the assessment on the building, and very much, Dan, they're trying to keep it as historically accurate as possible. But as he pointed out, there's been a lot of stuff done over the years that wasn't historically accurate. So the building really isn't anyways. And if you look at some of the original pictures, the storefront windows were individual 2-slider windows. They weren't even a big picture window, but they are looking at changing some of the material. But as they pointed out, material 150 years ago, wood versus wood now, will likely get 10 years out of a lot of it. So what they're proposing is stuff that's very similar, and they're just trying to, as he pointed out, one of the windows, he said they had 3 inches of snow blowing in through the windowsill that one storm. So their big thing too is timeline, is getting stuff ordered, because everybody knows we're looking at shortages. So it was on me kind of to Jeff that, can we get this through to the next council meeting, because it's a lengthy process to get the materials to do this. I think they're going above and beyond to make our showpiece in the main street look good again. So any other questions or?
Okay, thanks for that, Doug. If there's nothing further, we do have a recommendation here, and it is that municipality of West Perth approve the conservation plan for the restoration and preservation of the front facade of 55 Ontario Road, the Hicks House, as prepared by West Hall Heritage Research and Consulting. Mover and seconder for that, moved by Councillor Rose, seconded by Councillor Fournier. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor, any? That is carried. Thank you. All right, moving on then. Our next report, I believe, is from the treasurer, and it's with regards to the consolidated statements. So Wendy, if you want to come up and run through that part, that would be great.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. So the consolidated report is for November. And just to highlight in the report, it does talk that it does show the revenues are higher than the expenses, but then when you break it down by functions in the report, we are showing a deficit for the general operations. And again, just we're not quite done the year-end entries. We probably got a couple more months of entries to do. So I wouldn't be too concerned that we're showing a deficit, because we have all the transfers from the reserves to fund the capital projects. So some of the costing still needs to happen, invoices still need to come in, and then that final check that the project is done before we do the transfer. So if there's any questions on those reports.
Okay, is there anything you want to highlight or point out, Wendy, that
Other than just the fact that the water is showing a surplus, but the general is showing a deficit. But again, that's the year-end transfers that need to happen. But other than that, if there was a specific line item I could address.
Any questions? Dean, go ahead.
Wendy, thanks for your report. My question through you, your worship. When it comes time to start our budget deliberations, I wanted to ask if the respective department heads could kind of highlight within their reports what for their cost overruns that they might encounter for 2022, like inflation. Yes, that will be a factor, but could they also mention any other factors that would have affected their year-end results, whether it be an unexpected or unanticipated cost that was encountered during the year, or if it was a one-time, highlight any one-time expenses that wouldn't be normal from year to year, and also it would be helpful to point out any changes in service level that would be directly related to an increase in cost during the year, and also any legislated changes that would result in higher costs than normal throughout the year, just to give a better sense going forward where we stand in terms of our costs going forward.
So to answer your question, Dean, yeah, we certainly can. The way the reports are framed up in FMW, the new budgeting software, the report breaks down those columns. And so you can see the base year of which would be 2022's budget. And then it kind of goes across annualization. So that would be any kind of cost that would be incurred throughout the year that we know of. So oftentimes it's inflation, but there could be other items in there. So definitely we could highlight those. And then any legislative requirements that we know of, we can put them in that bucket. And then any one time and service level. So definitely across the bottom, we could highlight that per department or per cost center.
No, thanks, Wendy. We would appreciate that. I think even returning counselors as well as new counselors, we would appreciate it, just so that we can, things change a lot during the course of the year, and there's been far too many changes over the last 2 or 3 years to keep track of. So I think it would help give us a good comfort level of dealing with our finances for the 2023 budget. Thanks.
Okay, and I think in a lot of cases, when we go from month to month, when you do your report, there'll be certain triggers there that will tell us that, yeah, things are not the way we had hoped they would be, or maybe they'll be better than what we had hoped be. But I think we can, we can do that as we go along through the years too. So, Doug, go ahead.
I'm new and I'm trying to figure this budget out, but the one that stuck out to me was the Policing Safer Communities Ride program that we budgeted 38,000 and it's at 60,800. And I don't know if you can answer why or what that caused that, or okay, no, that's fine. If
I can bring it back though. That was police services. Do you have the page number that's on?
sorry,
Do you have the page number?
yeah, page 3, 210 X policing and
Oh, if you could
So
go down.
it's revenue that's over, and actually we don't have an answer right offhand on why that's coming in so much over revenue, but that's something we can check.
Yeah, we can bring something back. It's probably just a grant. Sometimes we fill them out and then the Provincial Offenses Act comes in with actuals and they could be higher than what was in there, but without looking at the detail, I can't say for sure. And I know if you were to look at some of the numbers, they do fluctuate a little bit. We've been doing some restructuring in the 3,000s, which is transportation. And so the job costing is okay in there, but when you look at the numbers, they look like, look a little strange. So Hannah, would you be able to just scroll down where you see 3,000? No, up one. So the first line there, it says wages and benefits. It says we budgeted in 2022, but $500,000, but we've only spent 30,000. That's just us restructuring them, and it's actually down in under 3701, which is about 5 down. It's showing that we budgeted $500,000, but we spent 1.1 million. So it's just basically those two lines have shifted down to 1. And so
And as we work through the program, eventually it will work itself out that, you know, after another year or so, you'll be able to follow along a lot better, I would think. But, just trying to get everything into its place here. Anything else? If not, motion here that we approve the, where are we here? That we, yep, that Municipality of West Perth accept the West Perth consolidated statements as of November 30th, 2022. Moved by Deputy Mayor Trinkowski, seconded by Councillor Foster. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Okay, and then borrowing bylaw, which is something that we do every year, usually the first meeting. It always used to be the first meeting.
didn't quite make that one. So this bylaw is for basically if we needed to borrow, if our cash flow was short, we could borrow. We don't foresee any issues with cash flow, and it's just a standard annual bylaw that we pass just for safekeeping. But we don't foresee any issues with cash flow, but it's a necessary bylaw.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. Any questions on that? It's just a procedure that we do. As I said, normally we do it at the first meeting, but okay. Motion here then that Municipality of West Perth accepts the annual borrowing. Yeah, annual borrowing bylaw report as information. Mover and seconder for that, Councillor Phelps, Councillor O'Donnell. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And then the next is the interim tax bylaw. We just got through paying our last one.
So this one is also a standard bylaw that we do at the beginning of the year, and essentially just gives the authority to bill 50% of last year's taxes. And it's called the interim tax bill. And the due dates for those are February 28th and May 31st of this year. And so the bylaw just allows us to levy the interim bylaw or the interim taxes.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy on that? Andrew, go ahead.
Just one quick question. It says the interim tax levy is projected to have a total levy of $8 million. Is that intended for each of the 50% of the total tax levy? Because on our budget documents, doesn't it give us a total taxation income of something around $9 million total for the year?
Yep, that's a good question. So the 8 million is actually made up of the county levy and education levy and then our levy. So the interim is all three. And so we have to pay the county and the school board their portion. And so we levy it on our interim. And so it's 50% of the entire levy, making up those three components.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then the recommendation is that the Council of Municipality of West Perth accept the 2023 interim tax levy bylaw report as information. We have a mover and seconder for that, Councillor Chessel and Councillor Rose. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. And then the next one is the asset retirement obligation, which is something new.
This one is new. It is coming from the Public Sector Board, standard 3280. It's a requirement. We do need to pass a policy, and it does come into effect in the 2023 financial statements. And so the policy, it kind of identifies when we go and retire an asset, if there is some kind of obligation. So usually it'd be like Ministry of Environment type of requirement that we already have to do. This just identifies our assets that would have those. So for example, if we had a septic system and we were selling the property or disposing of the property and we had to get rid of the septic system, we have to record on the liability what it would cost to dispose of it. So this exercise, we'll have to go through all our assets, make an inventory of them, and then apply some kind of cost to that. So it's a big policy, but that's it in a nutshell. So if there's any specific questions, I can try and get them answered.
Okay, Nicholas, go ahead.
Thanks, Walter. Wendy, would we or will we see in the 2023 budget some dollars toward third-party contractors to help support the asset retirement, or will you do it all in-house?
We're hoping to do it in-house. So the lower tier municipalities being within the county and also Stratford and St. Mary's, we've all worked together to get this policy written. So we spent the afternoon together and wrote it. So you'll see the varying municipalities have very similar reports. And so we meet quarterly, so we're going to try and work on it together. We do have different needs. So when we first met, we did see that, for example, the county doesn't have a swimming pool, but we do. So there might be chemical requirements that we need to record, may need to have some kind of obligation there, but the county wouldn't necessarily have a pool to deal with, but they may have long-term care facilities that have different kind of requirements. So we're going to first make a list of our inventory and kind of work together and try and use everyone's expertise to kind of work through it. Does that help answer?
Anybody else? Councillor Foster?
What kind of costs will this incur, like to run the to figure out what we need to do and assess all the properties and everything? What kind of costs are we looking at?
It's too early for us to say how much. I think right now in the asset management world, we are looking at our land and facilities. So we're making a good list of our inventory there. So we have internal staff to do that. We're already working on that to get that data cleaned up for those. So I think we'll just kind of leverage that into what this means for this requirement. I don't think it'll be a big cost for us. Unless we have reports that identify asbestos or something, that's some kind of special, but it's you only have to disclose what you know. So what we know today might be different than what we might know 5 years from now. And that's why you review it annually, so that if you come across a building that you never knew you had asbestos in, but now you know, then you would write that into the obligation.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Kankowski.
Through you, your worship. So Wendy, would it be fair to say that this asset retirement obligation step is the next logical step following the asset management plans that were mandated by the province?
I think it would go together. So I think a lot of the stuff we already do now is being required to be in a policy, similar to the landfill. Landfill liability work the same way. And this will be the same. So if we know we have an obligation, if we know we have something that requires attention, that when we dispose of it, we have to put that expense on the books. But like I said, you have to know of it today in order to record it. And so if we don't know, we just don't know. And as we kind of work through our list, we'll determine if we need to get some expertise on disposal. But off the top of my head, I don't think we have much to worry about. I know in the documents, we kind of tried to find out exactly details about septic systems and wells and stuff like that, but I think they're part of disposal costs you would have anyway. It's just recording it, making it a little more accountable, a little more in our base and structure, that if we're going to dispose of something, we have an obligation.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Recommendation here then is that the Council Municipality of West Perth approve the attached asset retirement obligation policy. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Fournier and Deputy Mayor Kukowski. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thanks, Wendy.
Could I just
yeah.
mention a couple of things
Sure.
that kind of came up today? One being MPAC. We got notice or an email sent today about 4 o'clock that AMO is advocating to put pressure on the province to find out about when the assessment cycle is going to return. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, and they're also strongly recommending that we reiterate this message to our local MPP and maybe discussions at the province. If any of you are going to Roma, they're just asking for support, I guess, and that we know that they're working on kind of advocating that, and also that MPAC is coming as a delegation on February 6th.
Can I just add, Wendy, that we'll forward that AMO email this afternoon to council so that councillors that are attending Roma have it in case you get an opportunity to make eye contact with a provincial ministry staff person or a provincial minister that might, you might be able to bend their ear. I think certainly this council is on record as wanting to see that cycle return, and we can ask MPAC about it, but it's really the province that has to make the decision to move forward with the reassessments for residential.
I don't think, as Wendy said, though, I think we could certainly send correspondence to Matt Ray and indicating our displeasure with the way that it is certainly currently. Yeah, like I'm sure that it's going to come up at the Roma convention that has previously, and you know, the word was that after the election they were going to come out and do a reassessment, but so far I haven't heard anything about it. So maybe we need a motion, Dan, for that, to instruct you to do a letter.
I'd advise that we let it flush out through its procedural process and it would come on consent agenda.
Okay.
I think Wendy was just advising you from the nature of the timing, because the next consent would likely come at that February 6th meeting, which then MPAC is scheduled to be here as well. So we would have that discussion if it's appropriate to bring that at the same time or not.
Yeah, and I think we should get this AMO policy position into the hands of council, because I know it's always a challenge. And it's unlikely that you would get an opportunity for anyone that's at the AMO conference. But at the other end of the scale here is that I don't think it's that effective for every municipality to be asking for a delegation at AMO and all be advocating, or at Roma, and all be advocating for the same thing. So AMO, when they have a position like this, I think it's very well thought out, very well documented, and they get a lot of weight to their delegation. And it kind of takes away from their delegation if everyone keeps pounding on the same message and maybe doesn't even have the precision of the accuracy of the advocacy. So we will share the AMO messaging, and I just want to encourage council that I think AMO's got it really well laid out, and the blame, if you want to call it blame, has to be laid at the feet of the province and not at the feet of MPAC on this. But the lobbying has to continue.
Anything else, Wendy?
And just on the topic of delegations, I just wanted to let council know that the auditors are going to come as a delegate on February the 21st, just to give their planning review or audit review to you guys.
Okay, good. All right. Thanks, Wendy. All right, very good. All right, that brings us down to bylaws. I don't believe there's any correspondence that I'm aware of. So we have number of bylaws here, 3 to be exact, I guess. So bylaw 1 is a bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement between us and Huron East for a road agreement. Bylaw 2 is the borrowing bylaw that we just discussed earlier. And bylaw number 3 is the interim, where am I here? Yeah, the interim tax levy for 2023. So recommendation is that we give first, second reading to bylaw 1, 2, and 3, the 16th day of January. Move and second for that. Councillor Vink, and seconded by Councillor Rose. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And then recommendation is that the municipality of West Perth give third and final reading to bylaw 1, 2, and 3 of 2023, the 16th day of January. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Chessel, Councillor Phelps. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. Next meeting, there's a special council meeting on January 30th. And other than that, I don't think there's a lot of upcoming things happening right now. We're starting to get back into the gist of things. Any notices of motion? Andrew?
I'd like to bring forward a notice of motion for the next regular council meeting of February the 6th, 2023. Being that the consolidated financial statements move from monthly to quarterly and that the accounts payable listing provided by email come to an
Okay.
end.
Comments? We don't need to discuss it at this time, but yeah, okay. All right. Anybody else?
I'll just take an opportunity to jump in on notice of motion procedurally for everyone at the table and maybe the viewers at home. But at this point, we're just providing notice to council for the upcoming meeting that a motion will be coming forward, in this case by Councillor Fournier. So the deadline to do this is Thursday prior to that meeting, just before we get out our agenda. So you did not have to do it tonight, and I know we advised you to do so just because we were here. But I know you have another notice of motion you maybe be considering. So Thursday, though, prior to the February 3rd would be our deadline to get it on that agenda. So just bringing that forward for all of council here and why we did that.
And if I could just add, if any counselor wants to bring a notice of motion, you can speak to Dan or myself or even Audrey in terms of helping you get the language around it. And you know that if we've had a topic like that in the past or whatever, we can share with you, or that discussion can happen. But we don't expect you to craft the wording of a notice of motion. If you want some assistance with that, just coordinate it with the clerk's office so that it really frames the notice so you get it onto the agenda for discussion in the way that you want to get it on.
So we do have a closed session. Motion here, and I'm guessing an hour and a half. I've got, it's about 7:45, so I was going to take a break in between, but I think we can probably get started into the closed session, and then I'm going to leave it with you. If there's an opportunity that we can maybe take a 5-minute break partway through just to stretch and take a washroom break or whatever, we'll do it then. Carry on. So the recommendation is that the Council Municipality of West Perth proceed to a closed session at 7:44 for the purpose of education and training the members in a planning workshop. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor O'Donnell, Councillor Foster, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Okay. So the floor will be yours. open session. So basically, what just occurred for the, oh. Okay, we've just come out of a fairly lengthy closed session with an education session with planning 101, I guess we'll call it, and for the new council and the existing council or the old council as well. So so all we have left, I guess, in the open session then is the confirmatory bylaw. And a bylaw number 4, 2023, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of Corporation Municipality of West Perth. Be read a first, second time, the 16th day of January. Do we have a movement seconder for that, please? Councillor O'Donnell, Councillor Foster, all those in favor? And then that bylaw number 4, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council or the municipality of West Perth, be read a third and finally passed the 16th day of January. Moved by Councillor Phelps, seconded by Councillor Rose. All those in favor? That is carried. And finally, a motion that we do adjourn at 9:30. Deputy Mayor Jankowski and Councillor Duck. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.